Hello and welcome back to the Quick Slant on Green Bay Packer Nation and greenbaypackernation.com. Today we're doing rants and raves from the Packers versus Lions, so stick around. I'll typically start out with my raves because, as always, I like to stay positive about the Packers. In this situation, since it is the last game of the season, we're going to flip that around. We're going to start with a few rants, quite a few rants, and move on to our raves. Let's close this season out with those positive raves. So I got to confess, there were a whole lot more rants that I could have fit in here, and I'm sure you'll add some in the comments. And I did a lot of digging to find some raves because this was just a rather ugly game. I kind of expected it to be ugly going into the game, but the way we kind of started out, moving the ball downfield pretty consistently and stopping the Lions' offense, I thought maybe I was going to be wrong, but it turned out to be about as ugly as I predicted. So let's plow through some of these rants real quick. I got to give a rant to Brett Hundley for throwing or not, and Jamal Williams for catching or not. I'm going to be honest. I think the interception off of Williams' hands was Brett Hundley's fault. Williams is a rookie running back. He's a running back, not a receiver. Yes, I think Williams should have been able to reel that ball in. But Hundley also should have gotten it out in front of him where he had a better chance of reeling that thing in. It was a great play, well designed, well executed, but Brett just did not get the ball out in front of Jamal in an attempt to try to reel it in. Jamal just double tapped it up into the defender's hands. So that was pretty frustrating, especially since we had been moving the ball fairly consistently, and that would have been a nice gain there. Hundley ended up with 58% completions and the two interceptions. He did have one touchdown, which I don't necessarily count. It was a decent throw, but it was garbage time, and the Lions defenders weren't really putting forth a whole lot of effort on that play, I don't think. So definitely got to give Brett Hundley a rant. Jamal Williams, he had several really nice receptions, which we'll get to in our raves, but he also had a couple of just colossal drops that were disappointing because they would have turned into some decent gains. I thought we did a good job of calling screen plays at the right time, and they at times turned into big plays, but with Jamal not catching the ball as efficiently as he should, it blew up in our face sometimes. Trevor Davis, I'm giving Trevor a rant on his decision-making on kickoffs. His decision-making in the punt game has been iffy, but if this guy can start making better decisions, he's fast, he's electric. We could have a lot of fun watching him run the ball back. We could have some great field position if he would make some decent decisions, and he's just not doing that yet. Hopefully, with another offseason under his belt, a little more time kind of looking over the film, maybe he'll get to that point where he actually is starting to recognize whether the seams are there or not. I've got to give the offensive line, I know we're just decimated by injury, but I got to give the offensive line a rant because late second quarter into pretty much the whole second half, they just were a sieve. And some of that was just the Lions have a very fast front four. Even David Bakhtiari blew an assignment as I can't remember who came around the end. Ziggy Ansah came on a stunt around the end, and Ansah's so fast that by the time Bakhtiari recognized that he was coming around, it was too late to get to him. And so some of that was the Lions have a good front four, but some of that was just terrible blocking, and I don't really think that Hundley held the ball too long. I think there were times, but I think that for the most part, we just collapsed far too quickly. I've also got to give a rant to the Packer pass defense. It's been an Achilles heel all season, and it was again this game. And it really, for the most part, I didn't think they did an atrocious job. It was just a few long plays that amounted to touchdowns, and we can't be giving up that kind of stuff and expecting to win games. Galladay had an average of 40 yards per catch. Only 2 catches, but 40 yards, and one of them was a touchdown. Jones averaged 20.3, and Tate averaged 14.9, which, 14.9 is not terrible, but it amounted to a touchdown was the big factor that pulled Tate's average up, because he's more a short-range receiver. All 3 of those guys had a touchdown, and that was... that was the backbreaker for the Packers, that we just never could get into the game because the pass defense gave up so much. And so those are my rants for this game. Drop yours in the comments below, and let's move on to our raves. My first rave is for the Packers run game early on. Back in the predictions, we talked about the fact that the Lions were ranked number 19 in the league in run scoring, and that was probably our best hope for winning this game, was to get our run game established, both with Williams and with Hundley moving out of the pocket. And we did quite well early on. We didn't maintain it enough, got into some situations where we had to pass, and that derailed our plan for implementing the run game. But overall, early on especially, the run game did quite well. Williams averaged 3.7 yards a carry and had 82 yards, which not outstanding, but not too shabby either. And he had some stuffs that really brought that average down, but he had some pretty big runs when he got some space. And I think part of that was just the offensive line was really not only struggling in pass protection, they were also struggling pretty heavily in making holes for our running backs. So, but we did quite well early on in the run game. I love the fact that we implemented the screen. To me, that's just an extension. It goes onto the books as a reception, but to me, that's just an extension of the run game. If you can let those defensive linemen get in and get the ball to the running back over top of them, well, then it's pretty similar to if the offensive line just made a big hole and the running back is now back into level 2 and level 3. So I'm going to wrap that screen game into my rave for the Packers run offense. Thought they did quite well. Trevor Davis receiving, it was fun to see him getting some action, because he doesn't get a whole lot because of our outstanding receiving core. However, he was our leading receiver with 56 yards. He averaged 18.7 yards a catch and made some pretty critical catches to keep the sticks moving down the field. So I was pretty pumped about Trevor Davis. As we're usually mentioning, Mike Daniels was a monster. As always, he had 3 tackles and a sack, and that was despite the fact that he was double-teamed almost every play. I can't think of a single play where I did not see Mike Daniels doubled. Even on the sack, he split a double team and got to Matt Stafford. So Mike Daniels definitely gets a rave. Jamal Williams, as I was re-watching the game, because I had to kind of dig deep for some of these raves, I did notice that Jamal Williams was doing quite well in pass protection. He actually took on Ziggy Ansah head on, and didn't not only, a lot of times a running back will chip a defensive lineman and make a little extra time for the quarterback. He face up on Ziggy Ansah and held him, and I was pretty impressed by that. If he can continue to do that kind of stuff, then it's going to get exciting next season when Aaron's back on the field. The Packers defense got a rant in their pass defense, mostly because of those big plays, but I got to give them a rave for their rush defense. There wasn't a single Lions running back that had more than 2.5 yards average. One had 2.5, and the other two had 2.3, I think. And so I was pretty pleased with how the Packers handled the Lions' run game. Of course, as they mentioned on the broadcast, the Lions don't really have an outstanding run defense or run offense anyhow, and they haven't for years. But still, that was one thing that was a bright side of this game, especially in light of the fact that Reggie Gilbert got a lot of playing time, and he's like the bottom of the depth chart in outside linebacking. So we dug deep and put some players on the field that would not normally get a chance to see playing time, and they did quite well. I thought Gilbert did a solid job, and definitely it's great that he got some reps, because going forward he can then be pulled into the rotation, and maybe they got a chance to see something in him in this game that might move him up the depth chart in 2018. So I will be doing one more final Rants and Raves next week. It'll be for the whole season as a whole, and you'll want to catch that. Also, we're going to dive into our By the Numbers later this week, so you'll want to check that out as well.